Hi, I'm Francis Potter. I served for about a year as manager for competitive intelligence for GitLab and came out of that with a few ideas around how a competitive intelligence program could work and decided to share those with you today. So hopefully this is helpful. The first step in formulating a great competitive intelligence program is to figure out who the competitors are for your business. Now, I'm assuming here that you're running a business-to-business software or internet company, probably in the enterprise space. And so that's where I think most of these ideas will apply. So who are your competitors? I actually run a little personal open source application for time management in Python. It's called Busy, and it's not commercial, so I don't worry about competitors. But if I did, I might make a list of competitors that includes not only the big and obvious ones, like Todoist, for example, but might also include broader project management tools like Asana, the iOS Reminders app, which could be used for the same functionality, to-do features in other apps, so whether in Salesforce.com or GitLab itself. To-do.text is another approach people use, just using a text editor on their own machine, paper and pen. So really try to think, or nothing is another option. Really try to think creatively about what are the competitors, what are the alternatives that your customers might consider for your application beyond just the direct competition of other applications in the same space. Once you've listed your competitors, it's also important to make sure that you have a clear definition of the taxonomy of the capabilities of your application or system and those that share the same market. And fortunately at GitLab, we already had that because our product management team was very organized about defining a taxonomy for product features. It's multi-tiered. The stage is the highest tier. The second tier is categories within the stages, and then the final tier is features within the categories. And those are actually, in GitLab's case, encapsulated in a set of YAML files that are stored in open source location, features.yaml and categories.yaml. If you don't have that definition, then it's important to start with product management and find out what kinds of spreadsheets or other systems exist for categorizing and defining the capabilities of the application or system. Now, notice I'm saying capabilities instead of just features, because sometimes the capabilities you're going to be using to compare competitively are not just features of the application that have their own code base, but they're also things like how performant is the application, how quickly does it respond to certain types of requests. And so it's important, I think, to use that word capabilities beyond just features. Although obviously features are capabilities, there's more to it. Once you've defined your competitor list and your capabilities taxonomy, then the next phase is to do the research around the competitive intelligence. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to fill out a competition table for each major competitor. And sometimes you might only get to one or two of them in the first stage of this, but it's important if you've got one or two big competitors to have a deep, thorough understanding of how your product compares across all of those capabilities. And so I work up a table where there are rows for each capability and a column for the description of the capability, a column for our product, and then a column for the competing product. And there's a completely separate document for other competitors. I don't try to make it cover all the competitors in one document. I found actually doing this in a Word type document or Google Doc to be easier than doing it in a spreadsheet. And that's because you don't want to be doing just numerical evaluations or check marks. Yes, we have this capability. No, the competitor doesn't have that capability. That doesn't really help. Doesn't help a salesperson who's in a discussion with a customer. Salesperson says, well, they don't have that capability. And the customer might say, or the prospect might say, but they say they do, you know, What about really describing how each product fits that capability? How do they define it? What kinds of version of that capability do they have? How mature is it? All that information needs to be in that table. And so it's really more textual information than it is numerical, or certainly it's not Boolean. Where do you do your research? Well, you start with marketing material. Obviously, our marketing material, the competitor's marketing material, what's on the website, what's in the white papers that can be downloaded, that kind of thing. Attending user conferences is incredibly helpful, especially if they're online. It's pretty low cost to attend a user conference, but there needs to be budget for that to kind of show up quietly at the user conference and take lots of notes on what the product management team is talking about for the competitive product. Sometimes they will tell you things in those conferences, in sessions in those conferences, that aren't evident from the marketing material, or future plans that aren't even evident from the product itself. Analyst reports help, whether it's Gartner or Forrester. Obviously, if and when analysts do start covering your sector, you need to know that you're going to chart well on those analyst reports, but also the analysts themselves can provide information about those competitors if they're covering that market. And hopefully your company at a certain level of maturity has relationships with analyst firms that are able to provide that kind of information, either in report form or by having a meeting and interviewing them and having them describe that to you. Then there's the secret shopper approach, which I think is absolutely critical. Install the competitor's application, install your own application, whether that's installing it on cloud servers or just setting up accounts within each of those if they're existing cloud-based systems, and or maybe it's something that can be installed on a desktop or a mobile device, right? And then really run through all those capabilities and try and deduce how they're implemented, what's the user interface for each of those things, how usable is it, how performant is it, and what's the model, the data model and the vocabulary model that's used to describe that feature capability, and how well does it actually work. That's all information you're going to add to that competitive matrix. Finally, there's insider information, which I'm not ashamed to say everybody does it, which is, you know, hey, that friend of a friend who works for the competitor, maybe they'd be willing to go out for a beer and spill a little bit about what's going on inside that company. Obviously, you don't want to be quoting that information back to prospects, but it doesn't hurt to have those kinds of conversations and get to know your competitor on the inside. For that matter, there may be employees in your own company who used to work for a competitor and might have information that's not quite trade secret, but maybe not quite public yet. And that's all information that can be used to fill out that competitive table for each of the major competitors that you've chosen to focus on. Okay, we've done the research and we've collected a competitive table. We're looking across all the capabilities and across one or two of the major competitors that we want to look at in the first pass. What do we do with that information? Because just analyzing and collecting information doesn't help anyone, right? You need to be able to share that. And there are a number of places internally that we need to share that information. There's obviously the rest of the marketing organization who are going to write marketing copy around that. Maybe you're going to actually share that whole table. I don't recommend it. GitLab is very transparent, and even GitLab doesn't share that competitive table anymore. Then there's the sales organization. Obviously, they need those, tools in their tool belt for when they go into conversations with prospects. And they're going to want to see that table. They also might want slides or white papers or documents that they can simply send to a prospect, especially if they can modify those to tailor them to the particular information that the prospect is asking about. Your prospects are smart. They're already talking to that competitor and they're hearing what that competitor has to say. So be ready to respond to that by having the salespeople knowledgeable about that and having them have that information at their fingertips. There's sales enablement. Most companies have a program of sales enablement. I gave orientation talks to new sales reps at GitLab, or maybe there are sales kickoffs or quarterly business reviews or other kinds of sort of programs for the sales team where the competitive intelligence manager can speak, share some of that information, maybe show off the latest slides that could be useful to the end, to use with the end prospects. I recommend maintaining the competitive tables in whatever knowledge system is being used by the company. In other words, play along with the systems that exist, whether that's something like HighSpot or something more focused on competitive intelligence like Clue. There's probably something, or for that matter, it's a SharePoint server or a Dropbox, right? There's some way that your company is managing that information and sharing it with the sales team. And then if there are internal newsletters or emails or Slack, whatever the system is for keeping the sales organization up to date on whatever enablement is available to them, make sure that you're posting to that regularly with updates and information and suggestions for how to access that knowledge. Finally, there's some amount of work that also has to happen with the product management team themselves, because this competitive intelligence is going to inform product direction, hopefully. And so that same information that's being made available to the sales organization needs to be made available to the product team. And maybe the competitive intelligence staff is attending product management meetings or speaking at get-togethers of that organization in order to share what we know about the competitor. What I don't recommend is leveraging the competitive intelligence staff too much on calls with prospects or on site with prospects. The problem there is the competitive intelligence people hopefully know that competitor really, really well, including that competitor's strengths, and you don't want them to let it slip. Let the sales reps do the spin, provide them with the information and the analysis, but the competitive intelligence staff should probably play a backseat role in the direct conversation with the prospects. Also, be careful about having competitive intelligence staff write marketing copy themselves, or at least be the final editor of marketing copy. If they produce that competitive table, a good marketing copywriter should be able to take that and turn it into a web page that says how you compare to the competitor without the competitive intel team having to do that themselves. Let the competitive intel team manage that knowledge base of information, have it be thorough, intense, technical, and complete, and up to date, because it has to be updated regularly as the situation changes on the ground. I hope this has been helpful, and thanks a lot for listening.